The youth bulge in Africa presents both remarkable opportunities and formidable challenges for the continent and the global community. This demographic shift can drive economic growth, innovation, and social change, offering countries the potential for a dynamic workforce that enhances productivity and creativity. However, if not effectively managed, it can lead to high unemployment rates, social unrest, and increased pressure on resources, as governments struggle to provide adequate education and job opportunities for an ever-growing youth population. For the world, particularly developed countries, Africa's youth bulge represents a potential reservoir of talent and labor that could address skills shortages and support global markets. Nevertheless, challenges such as migration pressures and geopolitical instability may arise if young people do not find opportunities at home. The integration of technology and artificial intelligence holds promise for enhancing educational access and vocational training, thereby enabling youth to thrive in a competitive global landscape. Thus, this session aims to explore the implications of Africa's youth bulge and the pathways to harness its potential.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our next session, the Youth Bulge in Africa. I'd like to thank you all for joining the session. When you look at the title of the presentation, I divided it into two different elements, youth and Africa, and both of them bring in exciting vibes. Youth is always about energy, the future, passion, the will. And Africa is the future. You look at the numbers, and I'm coming to that in a minute. It's all about potential. It's all about what's next for society. And if we go back to youth, in my world, youth is the most important asset in society. Hence, it's the most important asset for Africa. Yet I have to say, I do not like the word bulge. I like to use the word potential. Prospects. I think bulge is a bit of a rough word. And we have a lot to talk about, but let me first start by introducing my esteemed panelists today. I'm privileged to be joined by a lineup of esteemed panelists. And I'll start online. Alex is joining us online. Alex Tsaro is the founder and director of Alliance for AI. For the past decade, Alex has championed the initiatives to make AI cheaper and accessible for innovators worldwide. He deployed the first NVIDIA AI graphical processing units, GPUs, to the largest cloud providers globally, and now focuses on putting Africa on the AI innovation table. He's working with key African governments to operationalize their AI strategies and establish large-scale AI clusters within the continent. We're going to come into that repeatedly during the course of our conversation. Next to my far left, Professor Mohammed Lameen Dawi. Professor Dawi has over 38 years of experience in inclusive, sustainable industrial and socio-economic development. He works as a team leader and senior expert with a number of international regional organizations, including but not limited to UNIDO, the European Union, the African Development Bank, and others. He previously held several positions with the African Development Bank and Gulf Organization for Industrial Consultancies and UNIDO. Professor Dawi was also a professor at Tunis University. He was awarded the UNIDO DG Award of Excellence in 2006 and as Best Tunisian International Expert in 2015 by the Association of Tunisian Businessmen Abroad. He holds a PhD from Paris Dauphine University in France, and he has published extensively on industrial competitiveness, entrepreneurship, local clusters, and corporate social responsibility. I'm not sure if we're joined by Pato. She was to be online, but is she there? I don't think so. All right, if she joins us, I'll introduce her at a later stage. To my immediate left, I would like to, I'm privileged to introduce Her Excellency Ambassador Nabila Makram, who's been recently appointed as the head of the Technical Secretariat and the Executive Director of the National Alliance for Civil Developmental Work. She is the former Minister of State for Immigration and Egyptian Expatriates Affairs. Ambassador Makram has extensive experience as a diplomat, holding several positions in the embassies of Egypt and Brazil, the United States, the United Arab Emirates, and Italy. She is also the founder and chair of the board of the Fahim Foundation for Mental Health Support, which raises awareness through lectures, workshops, events, campaigns, and other outreach initiatives under the foundation slogan, "Understand, Listen, and Speak." Under her leadership of the foundation, she signed several partnership agreements with a number of ministries, as well as with the International Forum of Fine Arts and Development Foundation. She is a World Foundation member for mental health member. In the middle, Professor Aziz Ashbilu, a professor at the Faculty of Governance, Economics, and Social Sciences at Mohammed Sadis Polytechnic University. With expertise in statistics, applied economics, and demographics, Professor Ashbilu has extensive practical experience related to public policies from numerous leadership positions he held within the public sector. He was Secretary General of the Ministry of General Affairs and Governance between 2013 and 2019, and Secretary General of the Department of Governance and General Affairs, Ministry of Economics and Finance, 2019-2022. Professor Ashbilu served as Director of the Center for Demographic Studies and Research. Before that, he was professor at the National Institute of Statistics and Applied Economics. He also held various projects in international organizations, including UNFPA, UNDP, UNICEF, OECD, and the World Bank. His work covered many topics, including statistics, demographics, social economy, governance, social protection, poverty, public policies, and more. Professor Ashbilu is a laureate from the National Institute of Statistics and Applied Economy and a PhD graduate in demography from the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. I'll be privileged to be serving as the moderator of this session. My name is Sharif Kamen. I'm the Dean of the Business School at the American University in Cairo. So you can tell from the introductions, the diversity, the experience, the wealth of the background of my esteemed panelists. And let's go back to the title I don't like, the Youth Bulge in Africa. So Africa, I'll just set the stage and leave it to my colleagues to share with us their thoughts about Africa today, the future, and what needs to be done. And we agreed that we're going to do short rounds of answers and questions, and I'll get back to you not in the too distant future. We have less than 90 minutes now for questions and comments. So statistically, and you might find variations in the statistic online and through different reports, Africa is today 1.3 billion plus people. And that reflects 18% of the global population. The median is 19 years plus, which is way too young. 70% of Africa's population today are under 30, and 60% are under the age of 25. The population is one of the fastest growing worldwide, and 80% of the population, and that's a significant figure, 80% of the population lives in urban areas. Before 2030, which is around the corner, 20% of the population will be in Africa. The projection by 2035, more young Africans will be entering the workforce in the continent as compared to all other continents combined. And that in itself is a significant figure. By 2040, 90% of Africa will have at least, 90 cities in Africa will have at least 1 million people. That tells you how the growth is. I'll stop with the figures because I have many more, but I'll also share one last figure that the United Nations predicts by the end of this century. Surely, Africa will be in a different place than where it started. But also, Africa will hit 4.5 billion people, which is almost fourfold where we are today. Obviously, there are so many. Africa is not one country. It's a continent. According to different reports, I will choose the figure 54 different countries speaking more than 2,000 languages and dialects. So there is no one size fits all. Obviously, there are so many elements that relate to social issues, political issues, economic issues, different dynamics. But I think the only one element that is extremely important is how can education, technology, youth, and the future be combined for a better Africa. Naturally, our conversation will be around what do we do with this number? This number could be a fantastic opportunity, and it could be, to put it mildly, a problem. So obviously, with the acceleration of digital transformation, that opens up a lot of opportunity. I'm going to coming back to my colleagues here, either from the academic side or also from the industry side, as Alex is going to share with us his thoughts. But I want to have 4 characteristics, and I'm going to end with these 4 characteristics. 1, it's a fact. We have a large and growing population. 2, unemployment rates are through the roof. 3, there is an immense economic potential given the talent in Africa. And 4, what are the social and political implications? So with that, I'll ask my 4 panelists, not any specific question, but let's go 40,000 feet in about 3 minutes, each one of them. What are the transformations taking place in Africa, and highlight, in your views, what are the challenges and opportunity? In brief, we're going to dig in deep shortly after that. And I'm going to ask, I'll start with Ambassador Makram, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif, and it's very nice to be here today. Thank you, Dr. Abla, for giving me the chance to be part of this first Cairo Forum 2024 to talk about Africa and to talk about all the challenges that not only the youth in Africa are facing, but as well all the population of Africa are facing. Dr. Sharif, you've asked a very important question. What are we going to do with this number? And I will add another question. How are we going to secure this huge number? Because with all the digital transformation, all the open skies that we are seeing every day, like going faster than we thought, how could our youth in Africa protect themselves? The number is very big, and this is why we have to take advantage of our big number. But in the same time, we need to protect the youth from all what they are facing as challenges. And I will take this question, your question, from different angles, which are related to my job now as the Secretary General of the National Alliance for Civil Development. So we're talking about civil work. And we're talking also about mental health, because youth are having a lot of challenges. We're living in a different world now. And as I said, social media, wars that we are hearing about every day, conflicts, challenges, they are really have a great impact on their mental health. And the third angle, which is also related to my previous job as a Minister of Immigration, is immigration. Because a lot of African youth, they are seeking another chance, good chances, as they think, in Europe. So the best solution to protect myself is to leave my country and to go and search for a second chance in different area in the world. And this will lead also to a lot of problems unless they are very well educated. And I relate it to the word education. It's education about the whole world, about what we are facing and about what we are going to do related to that. The awareness problem, this is our own problem, because we know nothing about what's going on inside ourselves and outside the world. This is why I really believe that engaging the youth in the civil work it creates a lot of loyalty. It creates a lot of identity. It makes the roots there in the heart of each and every youth in Africa. We have not only the big number of youth of population in Africa, but also we have huge resources. Africa is very rich, but the point is, how could we attract the youth to learn more about the resources inside their countries, how they can work in their countries, how they can defend themselves and protect themselves from the mental health aspect.
Well, thank you very much. So I'm taking notes here, by the way. So 5 new keywords: mental health, immigration, security, emphasizing education, but also awareness. Pato, I'll come back to you once I finish the first round of questions. Over to you, Dr. Ajbilu.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to thank Omar and Abla for the invitation. I think I'm very happy to participate to this topic. And why? Because it's one of the important topics in Africa now. We cannot speak about Africa without speaking about youth. We cannot speak about Africa without speaking about employment for youth in Africa, poverty in Africa, and so on, migration in Africa, and so on. And I think we cannot speak about youth without speaking about transformations in Africa. Without speaking about youth, without speaking about factors that lead to this youth bulge. And also, without not speaking about youth, without speaking of the context in which young people are evolving. I think today's Africa is facing a challenge for having this growth that allow a lot of jobs in terms of quantity and particularly in terms of quality of jobs. I have 2 points to highlight. The first one, as you said, the chair, I think Africa has the highest demographic growth today. It's a huge population. I think we have to see it as a positive thing, I think, as an asset for the development of the Africa. But in the same time, as a challenge. We are in a situation that behind this change, we have that transition, the demographic transition. And we have to take this in count in order to think how to manage this demographic change in order to give the opportunity for these young people to contribute to the development of our continent. The second point, we cannot speak about youth without considering they are the digital generations. They are digital generations. And we have to take this in account. Why? Because they can contribute to innovation. I don't think that I am very advanced in digitalization than youth today, I think. And they have a lot of things to do. They have a lot of things to propose. They have a lot of things to develop in terms of innovation. And they have a lot of things to propose to address a lot of challenges in Africa now. But there are some requirements, I think. This requires a change in our approach, I think. And the way institutions function today. Youth people need to be considered as part of the development, not a subpopulation that needs, for example, employment, education, and health, and so on. They have to be in the development. They have to be considered as a part of the development. And they have considered as a subpopulation that they could contribute to address a lot of challenges in our continent.
Thank you. So keywords from your part, quality versus quantity. Obviously, the digital natives, and dare I say, they're much faster. Dare I say, smarter, more ambitious, and think differently. And then I add the word innovation. And then finally, and it's a very important point, the approach should be different in engaging them, get their buy-in. Dr. Dawi.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Professor Sherif. Let me first congratulate the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies, and of course, Dr. Abla for inviting me to participate in this very important first Cairo Forum. So, as you said, Mr. Moderator, Africa is experiencing profound, quick, and complex transformation reflected by a combination of technological progress, economic changes, climate changes, social changes, and political developments. The majority of this transformation have been covered by this first Cairo Forum. This transformation, which are shaping the socio-economic landscape in Africa, as you said, present both opportunities and challenges. Let me add few figures to what you said. First, concerning the opportunities. For many economists, the future of the world economy will for sure be played out in Africa. According to the African Development Bank, Africa is expected to remain and to continue the second fastest growing region after Asia. Africa has also become much more attractive in terms of foreign direct investment. In Africa, during the past decade, FDI flow has grown nearly sixfold. You talk about the population. The population will reach 2.5 billion in the year 2050. Regarding the challenges, let me list the most important ones. Economic growth has not been inclusive within the countries and between the countries. Access, and this is very important, to quality education remains very limited. Poor infrastructure, and we heard during the previous session how the infrastructure is poor when we talk about, for example, electricity, when we talk about digitalization, access to reliable internet, etc., transportation, etc. I'm going to use this word. There is a massive unemployment of young people and women in Africa, and I will give some figures later on. Just to conclude this first question, let me say that the structural transformation of African economies has the potential, and you mentioned this, to significantly improve prospects for youth employment and inclusive growth. For this potential to be realized, investment in physical and institutional infrastructure is crucial, and economic transition to higher value-added sectors, such as green and digital economies, tourism, cultural and creative industries are very, very important. This morning, His Excellency, the Deputy Minister, talked about the strategy of the government in launching this corridor, logistic corridor. These are very important, and this gives a lot of hope for the future when we talk about productive activities, when we talk about trade, when we talk about integration with the value chain at the local and also global and international level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So again, just a few highlights, not all of them. Inclusive economic growth, inclusive infrastructure development across the board. You emphasize what Ambassador Makram mentioned again, which is, I think, is going to stay with us in the coming 56 minutes, education. And I would sum up from what you said that Africa is the continent of the 21st century. So let's go online. Alex, your call.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Yes, and I think from my side, I would like to share 3 words and 3 points in 3 minutes. So my three words are businesses, education, and technology. My 3 points would be, so we talk a lot about creating jobs, and this is big because there's an obvious need given the high unemployment rates in Africa, but we don't talk explicitly about what's needed to create these jobs, right? To create jobs, you need companies to be growing, you need businesses to be growing, and for businesses to grow, they need to be making revenues, and for those revenues to be happening, the businesses need access to very highly trained people, and they need to be producing high value services. For example, doing manufacturing on top of raw minerals, the raw minerals that we have in Africa, but they need to be doing the manufacturing, or we need to be producing high value services that the rest of the world needs. And then this brings me to my second point. The second point is about the rest of the world. The rest of the world, we talk about the youth bulge in Africa, but then what's happening with the rest of the world? People will be growing older. The proportion of young people in Africa today is 70%, and that's going to increase. But in the rest of the world, their proportion is going to get smaller. When that happens, production in the rest of the world is likely to reduce a lot. And their young people will be extremely stressed with the higher taxes that are going to happen, so that their governments can take care of their older population and even protect them when you think about security. So the rest of the world is going to wish that, they're going to wish very strongly that they can create access to skilled African youth. The important word there is skilled and educated African youth. It has to be skilled African youths. So one of, I would say, the most important actions for Africa, like other panelists have mentioned, is education. The world and Africa has to come together to invest massively this very decade, so we're not rushing when it's too late. And then my final point is that increasing the education capacity, the old way of building many physical schools and training millions of teachers, those are things that we should still do, but they will be nowhere near enough to meet the demands. We will need to use technologies like artificial intelligence to transform education, because the teacher-student ratio is going to be ridiculous, right? It's only with a tool like AI or something else that will come after that, without that tool, one teacher is going to struggle to facilitate the learning of 1,000 students, right? Because that's what the ratio will start to look like very soon. So I'll pause my remarks there with those 3 words and 3 points. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Alex. You made life easy for me. So business, education, and technology, but you've emphasized the way the pedagogy and the way technology is going to be delivered has to be different. We will not let go the traditional ways, but the new evolving technology and how it's going to impact the scaling and the sustainability of education is definitely going to be key. Now, I'll make the introduction to our 5th panelist, Pato Kelesitse, founder of Sustain 267 and host of Sustain 267 podcast. Pato is a sustainable development practitioner, climate justice advocate, and founder of Sustain 267. She hosts a podcast which amplifies African voices, solutions, knowledge, and research in climate action. Again, going back to Dr. Dawi's point, engaging and the buy-in of the community, especially the youth. Pato is a delegate of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, where she negotiates loss and damage issues. She's also a board member of the Climate Justice Resilience Fund and an Urgent Action Fund Africa advisor. Recently, she was appointed to the Botswana National Youth Council by the Minister of Youth, Gender, Sports, and Culture. So, Pato, I think you joined just after I asked the first question, which is 40,000 feet, 3 minutes. What is happening in Africa when it comes to youth? Good luck.
Oh my goodness. Good afternoon, everyone. Didn't get to prep there. So what is happening when it comes to youth in Africa? I'm going to find a way to bring it into what would have been my opening remarks. And firstly, thank you so much for having me. I think inviting me. But I think when I looked at this topic, when we talked about implications and harvesting the youth bulge, what I wanted to bring to the conversation as someone who is part of the African youth is for us to always remember that we're dealing with a demographic that is ambitious, that is inspired, that is motivated, that wants to do something. If there's a common thread across the African continent, it's that African youth want to do something. And we want to do something in the face of poly-crisis, where we've got health issues, where we've got political instability, we've got the climate crisis, and all of those other things. But we all want to do something. And what I find to be the question of, are we left with implications of a youth bulge, or are we left harvesting the benefits of having a youth bulge as the continent, is what are we enabling? When the youth want to do something, what are we enabling for that something to be? Because an example I wanted to give you is we're currently hosting the local conference of youth on climate change. And the first two parts of it is online. We had, for the past 2 years, we've on average had 300 young people register and about 100 join online using their own data and their own time. And that is because there's a platform here that is created for young people who want to do something about the climate crisis to come together and do something phenomenal. But if that space is not created, if those resources are not created, if they're not given autonomy, then we have a problem, because something will be done. It just won't be something that we're happy about. So I think in closing of the question, what's happening across Africa is young people want to be amazing. Young people are ambitious, they're inspired, they're motivated, they want to act. They need the resources, which they don't have access to as of yet, and it could go either way. I remember a few years ago, it was the youth dividend, and now it's the youth bulge. But yeah, I think that's it. Brilliant young people, but it could go either way. Are we using that brilliance for good, or are we using that brilliance for bad? Some of the best minds that have ever lived are heroes, and some of the best minds are people we speak shamefully about. So yeah, I think that would be my opening remarks and trying to touch on the topic for round one.
Well, thank you, but let's stick to the positive side, that things are going to go.
Yes.
Creating the environment. I get it from what you said, everybody is ambitious, looking forward to the future, but then everybody needs a chance to be able to sort of express how they can contribute. But again, they need the opportunity, which you manifested it in terms of the resources and the environment. All right, let's move on to the second round. And I'll start with you, Professor Dawi. And I'll be very specific now. So we go down, dig deep into the issues here. So what specific, in your mind, you've touched upon a few things, but maybe you can pick one or two where you see the priority is. What specific opportunity and challenge that Africa's youth present today and in the future as the population continues to grow? More importantly, and that's the focus of the question, how can we strike a balance to benefit our own community in Africa, as well as using the opportunities that are creating around the world, as Alex mentioned?
Thank you, Professor. Let's see what the challenges are. In employment, as we said, among young and women is one of the major challenges of the majority, if not all, the African countries. According, and this is another figure which I will add, to the African Development Bank, only 3 million jobs are created annually in the formal economy, while between 10 and 12 million young people enter in the labor market every year. So
that's the formal economy.
I'm talking about the formal. Yeah. I will talk about the informal. According to ILO, the youth not employed, not educated, not trained, what they call the NEET. The NEET rate in the sub-Saharan Africa reached around 22% in the year 2023. This is also another number which is really give to you an idea about this challenge.
May I stop you here, just to push
Yes.
you a bit?
Yes.
So 3 million jobs are created, 10 million opportunities in the market. It's a huge gap.
It's a huge gap.
Is it a problem of the market requesting skills that are not offered, or is it the quality of education that the graduates have once they graduate is the problem, or both?
Both are the problems. So we talked about the formal. The informal represent 85% of the women and young who work in the informal sector. And as you know, when you work in the informal sector, you lose all your rights, and there is no future for this. There is no decent, these are not decent jobs when we talk about this. So if you like, I can also talk about the opportunities in relation with this bulge, youth bulge. Young people are often more open for entrepreneurship. This is very important, and I will talk about this later on, if you allow me.
Yes, sir.
The youth are generally well-served in technology, and this is why I'm talking about entrepreneurship, because there is a lot of opportunity with digitalization now. So for me, I mean, this balance between challenge and opportunity could be, let's say, taken into consideration and positive. And there is 5 pillars of critical infrastructure which must be in place. I talk about the infrastructure. The first is a massive need for physical infrastructure, from roads, ports, and sanitation to industrial parks and digital infrastructure. The second is there is a need for adequate energy infrastructure. And we heard in the previous seance about the need and the World Bank initiative for electricity in Africa. There is a need for access to finance, which is very important. And we talked about the access to finance for the climate change and also about the other sectors. The fourth component is the need for a pan-African regulatory infrastructure, because there is a connectivity, there is a need for, let's say, an African regulatory infrastructure to allow this intra-Africa trade to develop. The fifth one is critical infrastructure is needed for interconnected business networks.
Well, you pushed me to go off script here, and you're confusing me a bit. But I'll go out of script and go to Ambassador Makram. What you just said are all mainly sort of mega challenges that are across the continent. And for any youth, not just in Africa, anywhere in the world, they always look for a better life. Naturally, I mean, you know, the slogan says life is short, so I might as well make use of the opportunity. So from your experience, obviously, A, as a former minister of immigration, but B, working with civil society, is this a way where talents will be moving out? I mean, they look for a better life.
I know,
given those challenges.
Yes, I understand. But the thing is that we always look to immigration as the absorption of talents outside the country. But it's actually, in the same time, it's a revenue kind of, you know, foreign currency coming to the homeland or to the country itself. And in the same time, they are just passing their experience, which they took in the outside world. So let's first, I will return back to the youth problem. Now, I totally believe that the number of youth, this big number of youth in Africa, is a power to Africa. And actually, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi always have said that the power of any country, specifically, of course, Egypt, it's not in its wealth, rather than the power of the people inside their country. So if we build the loyalty, if we build the trust, if we tackle the identity, if we do a lot of things to make those youth believe that they have a good opportunity in their own country, this will put us in a different angle. Yes, we do have challenges inside the country. Yes, we do have routines. Yes, we do have problems. Yes, as much as you want, we do have it. But the thing is that how could we manage the amount of resilience that we, as Egyptian, we witnessed during out those years where, I mean, we excelled at. Sorry. Sorry for that. So again, the power with the youth could be transformed to a huge task that we need all to tackle, and we need to put all our efforts, because these are, or those are the future of the country. In the National Alliance of Civil Society, we are engaging the youth to work in civil services inside the country so they could understand that the country needs them, first of all, that they have a role, because all with youth, they just claim that we're not seen. We do not have any opportunity in our country. Who could help us in getting the right job? It's a stereotype kind of discussion around the youth. But when the country decided to tell those youth, listen, we are going to take use of you, we are going to take advantage of your talents. Let's see in those 27 governorates of Egypt, how would you like to help inside the civil society and parallel to what the country is doing? Again, we do have challenges. I'm not talking about we're living in the wonderland. No, we do have these kind of challenges, but the thing is how to engage those youth. And I'm talking, yes, in Egypt, but in generally, it could be implemented in Africa as well. So with the unemployment issue, and let me be frank and honest when I tell you that we have a lot of, as the president said, guests in our country, from Africa, from Syria, from Iraq. What did they do? They found in Egypt the best place to stay and to be safe. Did they stop at this point? No, they worked. And all the people talking about unemployment, they said, well, the people coming from other countries are finding jobs. And we inside the country, we said there is no job. If we have the will to create jobs, we will. The entrepreneurship, we have a lot of young people in Egypt who created their own business. And not only that, they are started to put it in the world market. We started to see people, young people, are merging in different markets in the world and creating their own job. The culture of having a desk, and after my graduation, I'll be the director of the company, and this is what I need. This is only in our culture, but with this new concept that we are all living in this new world, in this transformation for digitalization, for everything, we have a lot of access to other countries and to other markets. Africa, with the youth, with the resources, with the number, even with the handcrafts. I mean, we have a lot of things that in Africa that nobody could have. So this is why we need to combine all our efforts. Immigration is not something bad as long as it is legal, it is well planned, and it is also to serve our homeland.
Thank you. I'll bridge that to a question to Professor Ajbilu as with your academic hat, and I think Alex alluded to that with the digital transformation and accelerations that are taking place. What innovative strategies could governments adopt to create meaningful jobs? And we always talk about creating jobs. You will never create jobs unless you create enterprises, and enterprises create jobs. We're always fixated on creating jobs. Well, you need to start by creating enterprises. And that can happen through the proliferation of innovative startups across the continent. And we'll come into that when we speak more about AI. So what can governments do, not just in terms of the conducive environment, but also educational institution, to Dr. Dawi's point, what needs to change? Because surely what is being offered today is not classical.
You are the dean. I am a professor. I think there are many professors in the room. The key is the education. But we have to pay attention, not only education, quality in terms. I think it's very interesting to focus on this word. The two words are necessary. The third one is skills. We cannot think about education without skills.
Yep.
A diploma, you are a dean, I am a professor. A diploma is not enough today. I think we have to develop skills in order to have a good job. A good job. Give me someone who is well educated with skills, I guarantee a job. No problem. Let me go back to some challenges. I think we are in a conference and we are in the center of think tank. It's a center. I think it's we have to sometimes think out of the box in order to put things ahead. The question of youth bulge today, because there is a democratic transition, we have to think in a systemic approach. Today, we are talking about youth bulge. Tomorrow, with this demographic change, we will speak about aging population. I think we have to put these things together in order to find solutions, not for today, but for tomorrow also. Because tomorrow, we will have more challenging problematics, I think, in taking into account aging population. The second, as a practitioner of public policies, I think we ignore some levels in public policies. We think to a lot of initiatives. We have a lot of initiatives in different countries, in our continent, but we ignore some levels. And the first level is the implementation. The process of implementation of each public policy is very interesting. We take time in thinking, we take time in how to elaborate a public policy, a program, for example, but we take less time to the implementation, which is very important for the results. The second level is about evaluation. I think evaluation of programs is very interesting today. Because without evaluation, maybe we have a program with less results. And I think in this case, we create frustration in the youth community. If we evaluate correctly our programs, if we elaborate correctly our programs and implement them correctly, I think with best education, we will have a good job, we will have less problem in our society related to youth community.
Well, thank you. I could not agree more when it comes to the quality of education. And by the way, the fastest growing higher education institutions across the African continent over the last 3 decades are business schools. Yet in 54 countries, and I'm sorry to say that, in 54 countries, there are at best 25 good business schools, which means there is not even one business school in every country. And by the way, there are countries that have more than one school. When I scale it down to your point, which is the assessment and the evaluation, the rigorous assessment and evaluation, and I'll use the jargon in academia, which is the accreditation, then that 25 figure goes down to 7. 7 across 54 countries. But you also alluded to, and Ambassador Makram, that the next gen education is not just the one that is happening in the classroom. it's also the skill set. I mean, employers today, degrees are important and will continue to be important, but what are the skill set that the graduates needs to have to be able to be competitive and succeed in today's environment? And I'll turn it over to you, Alex. AI comes at the fore of all this. Surely we don't need everybody expert in AI, but AI can change the way we do stuff. So with your alliance and your efforts, how do you think the next gen higher education, and I'll focus on higher education, should look like with AI really coming as a storm?
Yes, you're quite right, Professor. I like to kind of remove the mystique around artificial intelligence and just call it automation, and being able to automate the way things are that you used to need only a human to do, but now you can automate how that happens. In the education space, what we're seeing in other parts of the world and very slowly come to Africa are things like chatbots that can answer questions that people have. Thankfully, Pato mentioned that our young people are very inquisitive and inspired and always asking questions. But a lot of times they can't find people to ask those questions. They can't find teachers to ask those questions. You can imagine a student in a university where they have a lecturer or professor that has to deal with 100 students. In fact, there are some classes. I grew up in Nigeria, and I started schooling there before I moved abroad. And we would have classes with 300 people in our university. You can imagine that professor would never really answer your questions. But now with AI chatbots, you can ask a lot of questions that you have and get your answers back. With our organization, Alliance for Africa's Intelligence, it's a NGO, we have conducted trainings where we teach people in the African workforce how to use AI tools, AI chatbots to answer critical questions they have. One of our projects was in Zimbabwe, where we worked with farmers in rural areas and helped them learn how to simply use their WhatsApp on their phone to ask questions from the Meta AI bots on their phones about things like planting seasons, changes in the weather, how that's going to affect their next 3 to 6 months of planting, and best practices they can take to improve things for themselves. And it was truly incredible to see the kind of questions they were asking and how much that was going to change things for them, because without that bot on their phone, it was going to be, it was previously very difficult to find that kind of information. So that's one big way. Another big way is in AI tools that can even provide coaching and guidance on how people learn. In fact, we are building one of those tools called Ahura AI, which, with the webcam in front of the person is learning in front of a computer. The webcam can analyze things, your non-verbal cues like the stress on your face or the excitement on your face when you see new information, or it can also identify when you're getting distracted, like using your phone for a very long time or talking to other people, and make suggestions to you on changes you can make while you're learning. And so that way, I will summarize it by saying AI is an opportunity to make people a lot stronger, independent learners, where they can learn by themselves using these AI tools, as against the past, where they depended a lot more on a human teacher that has a limited capacity to answer everybody. So with AI, we can serve many more people and meet the need that we're going to have with this growing number of youth on our continent.
Well, thank you, Alex, for emphasizing that our jobs is fading away very fast. I don't think professors in the near future are going to find jobs. That's a different story for a different conference.
Oh, please try to say that's not true.
Yeah, you put it in a diplomatic way. But anyway, so if I twist what you said and bring in the entrepreneurial spirit, we look across Africa, Morocco, Kenya, South Africa, your own country, Nigeria, and Egypt. There is a growing, they're still scratching the surface, but there is a growing appetite for startups that are impacting society and so on. So if we bring the digital transformation, AI-driven startups, how can this change the fortunes of the youth in Africa?
And this is a question for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I like to think of this as in the last couple of months I've been describing something called AI hubs, and how in an AI hub it can be a place that is well. Let's put it this way. To talk about an AI hub, let me first talk about the potential with outsourced tech jobs. I was looking at some numbers a couple of days ago, and it appears that for a country like Nigeria, there are about 60,000 outsourced tech jobs happening within Nigeria. And I can imagine similar numbers in Egypt, if not higher. Each of those jobs, if these people are earning $25,000 a year, when you multiply those numbers out, you get $1.3 billion a year of earnings coming from outsourced tech jobs. And these are people who barely have good internet and barely have good access to power. So if you could give them better access to power and better access to internet, they should be able to earn a lot more than $1.3 billion, because the clients from the rest of the world would trust those builders more if they have access to those infrastructure. So just putting it in there that we should really invest in infrastructure. And let's not be so scared about investing in infrastructure for the entire continent of 1.3 billion people. We can start in small phases where there are hubs that we enable with the electricity and power that they need. For it to be an AI hub, in addition to electricity and power, you also need something called the GPU compute, right? This is the fast computer that enables AI. Without the GPU, you can't really build useful AI solutions. And there aren't many GPUs in the entire African continent. Only a few countries, like thankfully Egypt has some GPUs, but not nearly enough. And we need to create AI hubs that have those things. And let me paint a picture for you. If one startup accelerator incubator was to invest, say, $1 million in getting the internet, electricity, and GPU it needs for, say, 10 startups to share access to that, I wouldn't be surprised that that $1 million investment would yield up to $20 million in revenues increase and additional venture capital investments. So this is a great worthy investment. We are actively seeking governments and startup hubs that want to make this investment, and we'll help guide you through to those kind of returns.
Thank you. We have a follow-up from Dr. Ajbilu, and then we have 8 more minutes for a few questions from the panelists before I turn it over to you for comments and questions. Over to you.
I think it's a good question. I think sometimes we ignore our capacity as Africans to help each other. I think we have a lot of things to share. You mentioned Egypt, you mentioned Kenya, Morocco, and so on. If we create, for example, a network in order to help each other without importing some solutions from outside, we have to adapt them to Africa. I think we have a lot of things. It's a good idea. Why not to create this idea to help each other in terms of creating job, in terms of education, and so on. I think it's very interesting. And sometimes, yes, we can, for example, ask the help for international organizations for funding and so on. I think, but the ideas and because solutions have to come from specific area in Africa. And in this case, it's very interesting to work together.
Absolutely. I could not agree more that the homegrown sort of knowledge and cases and best practices should be shared rather than just thinking on a vertical term. Pato, I'll go back to you. I know that your podcast is primarily focused on climate, but it also reflects African voices. I'm sure you get into different stuff. What are you hearing? What are the those that go through your podcast and share their thoughts are thinking of?
Thank you for that. I think touching on what some of the panelists have said, I'm hearing a lot of the same themes. So like the minister said earlier, youth is a power to Africa when it comes to
solutions and open up doors so that we can see brilliance. A theme that runs across a lot of the conversations from academia and research, from entrepreneurs, and even people affected by climate change is that they have the solutions. So people know the challenges that they're facing and they have the solutions. And someone spoke about, one of the panelists spoke about this earlier. But what's missing within those solutions is space to execute them. So even in academia, we've got brilliant researchers across the African continent. But when you look at where does that research end up, what does it inform? It goes and collects dust. So that thing of how do we bring all of those, everyone has a solution from their respective backgrounds. And when they come together, they can turn that youth bulge into something that's positive for the continent. And I think when we talk about solutions, taking from some of the questions that some of my colleagues were responding, some of the other panelists were responding to, I think what's important as well as we look at solutions is bringing young people in and African people across as partners, not as someone who something needs to be done something about. So when we come up for solutions of, we've got these many young people, we need solutions in the face of the climate crisis, what can we do? We all know how innovative young people are. Sometimes it's not even about doing something, it's about doing less. We've got policies across the continent where some countries are now starting to tax data. Some of them are starting to tax content creators, which takes us back when we're trying to go into areas that would be creating jobs and traditional jobs, because with the present that we have and the future that we're going into, we need unconventional jobs, we need unconventional solutions, we need ideas that we haven't seen before. And the people who have those are a lot of younger people. So looking into how do we bring that in? Earlier, I think the former ministers talked about how immigration is not bad, and one of the other panels talked about help each other, which I fully agree with. When we work together as a continent, we're hedging our bets in the face of any challenge that may come up. When we open borders, but in the meantime, suspend visas, we're able to, if there's an opportunity for work in South Africa for someone from Botswana, they're able to take it up. If there's a shortage, in Botswana, we only have 2 million people. Yet we've got a very stable economy. There's a lot of opportunities here, but we are a very small country. If we could have other skilled people come in, then it works for the economy and it works for young people across the continent. So looking at removing those barriers, and if we're to, I like to give prescriptive actions. And I think if I was to list the things of what needs to be done to enable the brilliance of the youth bulge, first, I'll give you like 5, because I think looking at time, this is probably the last time I'm speaking, but first would be access to flexible funding that allows people to explore. We're always seeing brilliant innovations from outside the African continent because people are given blank checks. When we are funded, we're told this is $20 and you can do anything you want as long as it responds to adaptation in a way that speaks to food and. So more funding that allows people to explore, and from that opens up avenues for brilliance. And then the second one is when resourcing storytelling. We still have a huge challenge of how people perceive Africa, not just Africa, African youth. And we still don't take things like storytelling seriously. So with all the brilliance that is happening, all the things that I hear about on the podcast, a lot of them are hard to find. And perception, unfortunately, hits our pocket. If people have the perceptive that Africa is unstable and the youth can't be trusted and because they're not getting the true stories, we're not putting the resourcing into telling the true positive stories of Africa, then we're going to continue to have a negative perception tax when it's not the reality of what's on the ground. So second one, resource positive storytelling by African youth. And when engaging, our governments should be proactive. When they're engaging foreign governments, when they're engaging other regions, they should not go there as receivers, but go there as we're coming into this deal looking for something for our youth population. We've got brilliant resource that are young people. Germany, for example, I think they last I heard they need to bring in about 40,000 workers every year. When we are speaking to a country like Germany, they're not doing us a favor. They need labor coming in to keep their economy going. So when we negotiate with that, negotiating from a place of power, and our governments, when they stand for youth, not talking about them like they're an expense on the balance sheet, but more like they're an asset. And in that, believing in them, even what they're able to tap into for them globally will change. And when we make agreements to open up opportunities for young people in Africa, when our governments, because a lot of entities engage our governments, from the work I do with climate, anything you want to do, someone will be like, what does your government say? What's your government position? We only work with governments. When they negotiate with these, looking at avenues of, yes, we want the main person to be government, but our governments have countries to run. They've got people to keep safe, people that they need to protect. Creating other avenues of how can, outside of us, young people take advantage of these open doors so that they're not always going through the bottleneck, which is government. So they open the door, they hold it open, they move out of the way to see young people do what they can. And I think that's about those are my four prescriptions for how we can make sure that we harvest the youth bulge.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's not a destination, so it keeps changing. And so I like when you said it's we need to work together. And several of my esteemed panelists here said the same. It's more collaboration. We have differences, but also have many similarities. And there is no one size that fits all. But communication and storytelling and engaging the different sectors of our stakeholders in the society is extremely important. I'm still looking at the watch, and I promise you from now we're going to go overboard maybe 2-3 minutes, and I apologize for that. But it's an interesting conversation. I'll turn it over to Ambassador Makram with her experience with the National Alliance for Civil Developmental Work. It's an experience that is happening in Egypt. The question is, how can we scale that up and share the experience with other African countries, but also learn from their own experiences?
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. I will just comment on what Pato said and what Alex just mentioned as well about partnership and about how to share experience. When I was a Minister of Immigration and Egyptian Expatriates, I just want to share this story with you because this is a wonderful experience about having or sharing experiences with the African youth. What I did one time, actually more than one time, is to have like a workshop between the African youth, the entrepreneurs, African youth, with the Egyptian ones living abroad and just passing their experiences to their home country. Pato, you cannot imagine how African youth have this entrepreneurships all around the globe. And when they had partnership with the Egyptians in Egypt, in different angles, like in doing bags or leather products or stuff like that, they just mingled together and they shared experience. And like Alex said, the partnership between the African youth and the Egyptian one could lead us to open projects that we could benefit. So Pato, if you don't mind, I will take your number, and I would highly recommend that you could do on your podcast a meeting or an interview with those African youth and the Egyptian who had this partnership together. Now, returning to the question, yes, the National Alliance for Civil Development is engaging young or youth, Egyptian youth, to work in the field. We have in the National Alliance about 100,000 volunteers, and they are doing this job out of love for their country and out of the responsibility, the service, the social responsibility to serve in their country and to gain experience from what they see and from what they do to help needed people in the 27 governments. So as I did when I was an ex or a minister for immigration, I would like to host another event between those not the 100,000, but those volunteers of the National Alliance with the African youth, because, you know, when you talk about civil work with the inside the African continent, it's not like when you talk about it with the European, because we do have family needed, we do have poverty, we do have challenges, we do have problems. So when we tackle these problems and we share how the civil service could help by the youth of Africa, how to help each other, and how as well we can form groups of partnership, of learning from each other, of sharing our experiences, I think that this will be another angle to help our countries and to provide development and entrepreneurships within the youth of the whole African continent.
Thank you. Let me stop here and turn it over to the audience. If there are, here are two questions. Let me start with the first row. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. My name is Ma Abdel Nasser. I'm a member of the Egyptian Parliament. Well, actually, when we are talking about the cooperation between Africa, from my point of view, I think we definitely need cooperation, and I'm glad that we have Tunisia and Morocco on the stage, Egypt, of course. I think we will not have real cooperation before having some kind of reconciliation between the North and the South. We have to change our mindset in the North of Africa, in all our countries, that we are African, and we convey the message to them. I'm heading next month to the African Internet Governance Forum, and I've been there last year, and actually a lot of African, not countries, African citizens, they don't see us as part of Africa. They don't think that we are cooperating enough. They don't see that we can have the data flow between all these African countries, and we have the real cooperation between us and them. We need to change this us and them and start talking about all of us as African countries. Thank you.
Thank you. You raise a very important point. Any reactions from the panelists?
I agree totally.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Any further comment?
I think so.
What I would like to say is we are talking about cooperation North-South, but we also talk about cooperation South-South cooperation. I know that Egypt, you have a program for strengthening the capacities in the sub-Saharan countries. Morocco also has one. India also has one. So maybe through this South-South cooperation, we can change this mindset between African, North African and South African, let's say, or sub-Saharan African.
Absolutely. Thank you for your comment. Yes.
Thank you very much for an excellent, and very engaging session. I'm both a member of the Senate and a professor at the university, and I'm dealing with this particular age group.
Good luck.
In a government university, so I'm very much exposed to their frustration, and I'm happy that you touch upon this point. And I think this is one of the things we need to work on. In the first session, we were talking about decolonizing the mind. We as cultures, we still, not only patriarchal, but hierarchical culture for a long time
These young people have been marginalized, pushed to the periphery, not allowed to be in the center. So they have this horrible, overwhelmed feeling of being unneeded. This is not our country. And their whole dream is to escape. I mean, I'm teaching 4-year students up till now. The majority of them, the dream is to escape. With my respect, yes, immigration could be a good source if you know what you're doing and if you have it. But if it is a form of escape, just looking and not invading, trying to invest in what you have in your own country, this is something horrible. And it's even worse when it comes to gender, to girls. And they are not being empowered enough, and our education, unfortunately, is not up to that. Poto, you raised this very important issue. You're coming from Nigeria, the country of my favorite writer, Adichie. I mean, who talked about the danger of a single story, and we're all, victims of a single story, whether of ourselves, and this is how Africa is perceived now, North and West. Edward Said mentioned this earlier. So, but I'm thinking of two things. Maybe we can come with that, Dr. Abla, as recommendations. We don't, Dr. Nabila is doing a great job. Somebody else is doing another fantastic job. We need like a sort of a strategy, unifying these efforts. Consolidating them, cooperating, as you said, partnering within Egypt, and then on an African level, trying to find, because I believe in Africa and I'm a lover of Africa. So we need to work on a strategy. It could be a combination work between Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Education, higher education. This is very important. And that brings me to education and the quality of education. In my college where I teach, we are at a mess because we are in a problem. I teach English literature. In a way, we find jobs. Our colleagues in psychology, they don't have students this year. So now we're having a problem of we need to adjust our educational institutions to somehow meet the market demands. Thank you very much.
Just want to thank you for your comment. I just want to reflect on what you said, and especially when it comes to education, and I completely agree. But I look at it from one tiny window that makes all the difference. Overwhelmingly, our educational system across the continent pushes our students to what to think rather than how to think. And that's the crux of the matter. That's the first point. The second point, when you mentioned the gender issue, I can share with you, again, storytelling. I used to sit as co-chair of something called AWIC. AWIC stands for African Women Entrepreneurship Cooperative. For about 8 years, these are all entrepreneurial women from across all African countries in more than 30 industries. Going back to, I can't remember which panel said, they just need a chance. Once there is a chance, the sky is the limit. By the way, they're not all well educated, but they need a chance and they put things together. Any more? Yes. Yes, sure.
I just want to say a few words about what you just mentioned. The country is not against migration. It is against illegal migration. So this is what we need to clarify here. For the women gender, I believe that this era is witnessing a progress in what's called women's rights. You have a former minister, you have 2 parliamentarians, you have Dr. Abla leading one of the most important economical centers and now performing the first Cairo Forum. You know what they need? They need to listen to you, the girls. They need to hear your story. They do not need just to say, no, we have big chances for women. When they learn from you, how did you manage to achieve this? They will change their opinion because you are a life example. So this is why even in the Fahim Foundation, the slogan of the foundation is to talk first, talk, and then listen, and then understand. So we need to talk to those youth. We need to give them the hope, because otherwise we are just leaving them to all the social media, all the people who are talking negatively about the future of a girl inside her country.
Thank you. Ibrahim? Sorry, the mic is here. Go ahead.
Is it working? Okay. Hi, I was born in the year 2000, so I think it's safe to say that I can
You're a digital native.
The youth.
Yeah.
Yes. But I had a question to the panel. I was interested to know your take or advice or expectations that you have from the youth, specifically in the policy making process? Because sometimes, or a lot of times, the youth are included. They have a seat on the table, but they don't have like a meaningful and effective role. And I think that's the cycle that we need to break. So I wanted to know your take.
You mean that they're there but not there?
They're there. They're represented, but they don't have like an effective and meaningful role. So that's very interesting.
يعني not really, because again, with the women era, we have the youth era. For the first time, we see young people at the parliament. We see young people, deputies for ministers. We see young people as governors. So no, I'm not really with your opinion, because this era changed a lot. The thing is, again, that those people who are in power, like young, like women, they need to pass this experience to the young people coming and to the young girls coming. They are there. They are taking part of the political decision. You could see for the first time, when I was young, my utmost was to see the president on TV. Now, with the World Youth Forum, the young people are talking to the president, and not only talking to the president, they are arguing with him, and he is giving them the chance. So, being there and not there, I don't think...
100%. I wanted to ask, what's your advice to the youth? Like, what do you expect from the youth to have them in even more meaningful?
I'm not advising the youth. I'm talking about the people
yes,
who reach that point to talk to the youth.
Yes.
Because they need to listen to these experiences. They need mentors. They need people who can guide them. But again, when I speak to the youth, I just tell them, trust in God, first of all, trust in your country, and do whatever you do, because the road is not full of flowers. We have challenge. We will fall, but the most important thing that you learn from experience, and you just have this kind of resilience to just move on in your path.
Sorry, we're running out of time. I'll take one last question before I go back for final thoughts. Dr. Ibrahim.
In fact, there is a lot to be said about migration and about employment, but I won't talk about that. There has been decolonizing, and the first thing to decolonize is to drop this term of sub-Saharan Africa. This is the most colonial term that one can imagine.
Very true.
In fact, not only is it colonial, it is a wrong term, because the south of the so-called North African countries, south is in the Sahara.
Very
and
true.
where is Mali and Chad? They are in the Sahara. They are not sub-Saharan. Even geographically, it's wrong. It is the most colonial term. And in the African Union, there are 5 regions: West, Central, Southern, Eastern, and North. I think we should cling to that and stop talking about sub-Saharan.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't, the boss here, Abla, just gave me the red flag, and here it's all red. So I'll just do a very quick round, 30 seconds. I'll start with you, Pato. Final thought, 30 seconds.
Okay, my final thought is going to respond to some of the key questions asked. On the North-South, the divide, we know it exists. The way to address it is to start to partner. And then when we start to partner, start to share the stories of it happening. That's the only way to do it, to actually actively close it. And then the second one, I think there's a professor who said they work with youth. Someone please give her a hug. We know how we can be. But when we are frustrated, and what governments can do, on the comment that the professor made, is creating enabling environments. Once again, opening the door and standing to the side. If they really, really want to do something, they can look at canceling, getting the African debts cancelled with some of the multilateral, getting African debts cancelled, and then that money can go towards building the infrastructure that we need to have amazing AI tools That's one thing that they can do. Otherwise, leaving resourcing and leaving youth to be amazing. And the young lady, I didn't
You're going
catch,
over 30 seconds.
Okay, one last one. I want to respond to the young lady who spoke about what is the expectation for young people when it comes to policy making. I think my advice to you would be know the policy making process so that you can keep the pressure on. Being an active citizen is not only the time when you inform policy is not only at the ballot. It's also about during the process when a policy comes up. Do you know when they go for consultations? Attend those consultations. Make sure that your voice is in there.
Okay,
Kenyan
thank you.
youth make
Thank
sure
you,
that they
Patu.
knew what their processes were and they acted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alex?
Yes, thank you very much. Incredible stroke points and incredible panel. My final thoughts here, like you said earlier on, Dr. Sheriff, 70% of our population is young and is growing. It is going to be able-bodied people that can work and produce, but they cannot produce if our governments don't make it easier to do business. So like Pato said, ease of doing business. If you can track just one thing for your country, it's ease of doing business. How do you rank on that list? Improve that. And the second quick thing is AI can help get us past infrastructure gaps. This is the only way one lecturer can teach 1,000 students or one doctor can treat 10,000 patients. It's only through AI. Let's invest in things like AI hubs and get us to this dream future that we want. Otherwise, I think we'll have a pretty tough time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor Dawi?
Thank you very much. So one of the solution which was experienced and which reached big success is what we call, I talked about this mass unemployment. This mass unemployment require what we call the mass entrepreneurship strategy. The strategy was developed in India, implemented in India, Pakistan, Brazil.
So you scale up the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what is the objective? The objective is to train and to teach this entrepreneurship culture from the college, from the secondary, in the vocational training center and in the universities. In Ireland, they start talking about this entrepreneurship from the primary school to the young people. What is the objective of this mass entrepreneurship? Is to have 60 to 70% of the graduated from universities or from the vocational training have their own business, their own enterprises. I think this could be a very good solution for our countries, North and South countries in Africa.
Thank you.
I think solutions exist in our countries, and the key is cooperation South-South. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we need, or it is important to highlight our African identity. It's really important to talk more to the youth. And it's really important to share our experiences. And this is how we will secure our African future.
Thank you. That was a good wrap up. Surely, had we stayed for 2 more hours, we would have thought of other interesting or as interesting ideas. But I think this will be for maybe the second Cairo Forum and for the rest of the panels today. Please put your hands together for our esteemed speakers. Thank you. Thank you so much.